welcome back to another video. I'm having to be quite kind of subdued and quiet now because it's quarter to midnight in my house at the minute and everyone's asleep. By everyone, there's additional people here and it's just carnage at the minute. My mum has not been very well, so there's just a lot of other things going on at the moment outside of this, so I've not actually had a chance to get down and actually shoot one of these until this time. Luckily for me, I am a night owl, so we will get to do this, but in the standard fashion. If this is your first time to the channel, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ben Cardle, and I am the author of the best-selling book, The Monographs, which details the real-world methods for the skill set of Sherlock Holmes, how to develop them, and how to train them, and how to utilize them in every walk of life and situation. And I now spend my days teaching people from all over the world how to do this for the protection of themselves and those around them, and that has led me to work with some fine individuals from all over the place. And I'm now the director of behavioral insight for a company called ProCypher. So if you ever want to check them out, it's procypher.co online. With that in mind, today's video comes from the kind of fallout of the West Memphis Three, Terry Hobbs, a man who was embroiled in the whole affair, being the stepfather to one of the poor young boys that lost their lives. Him and his wife Pamela had their own issues. This isn't a breakdown of him, but just to kind of catch you up of why this video's been so requested. Is he was quite the man of intrigue, coming from a family that was very well off, had a lot of money, but he didn't have any of it. Had his own criminal background in terms of breaking and entering, drugs, marijuana, cocaine. There was the whole thing with Mildred French, which was he broke into her house. She thought he was going to attack her and rape her and the like. And then there was the whole thing with the young boys that lost their lives. In that there were reports coming in of people that I think it was the Jacoby fellow that stated that he saw them walking through the woods near where their bodies were found. There was the three affidavits saying that Hobbs was seen with the boys on the night of the murder. There was even his nephew came out saying, my uncle did it. My uncle killed those boys. And that was their big family secret and the like. So that's all of the information I have to come into about Mr. Hobbs, right? About Mr. Hobbs at this stage. So the video comes from one of his deposition videos that are out there. I don't believe it's the full video because I can't imagine any deposition only taking this amount of time. So that's something for a matter of conjecture there. I think I have the link to the original though. So if you want to watch it in full, then please do so. But yeah, it's important to note that at this stage, as we say in all of these kinds of videos, this should never be taken as a certainty, right? Because essentially we are dealing with soft sciences. Right, that's what we're dealing with at the moment. How we apply them is very different depending upon person to person to person to person to person. But what we are dealing with here is something that isn't based on an equation. You can't do that with people. You can't say if this happens, then this person will do this and spit out an outcome. Otherwise, we'd all be the same and we'd all understand how every situation was going to happen. It will become a virtual element of precognition at that time. So it's important to understand the contextual implications of everything, which does tend to irritate a lot of people that I go into that side. It's not as sexy in the areas of confirmation bias, but I don't care. I'm presenting my findings as I observe them, based on the background of work that I do. Because there is never, ever, ever going to be a situation where you will see something that equals this. And if people are telling you that, then they need to be educated a little bit further. I nearly stepped into a little bit of a rant territory there. But yes, let's do this. Let's have a look at this footage.
Plaintiff Terry Hobbs.
So he's already quite a subdued fella.
You'll raise your right hand.
There won't be a lot of action. Let me turn the volume down a little bit, actually. There won't be a lot of action in his face in terms of his expression.
Mr. Hobbs,
You can tell that from the fallout of the wrinkle remnants on his forehead. There's no outward signs of overactivity like there is in mine. So when I do this, you can still see the outward signs of the activity of expression on my face that it's been used that often, whereas he doesn't have that about him. What we know from a rudimentary kind of psychological perspective, if we add up the basic premises of coming from money versus outward levels of crime, that comes with elements of being ostracized from the family, the proverbial black sheep, depending upon one way or the other that they go down. There's a certain degree of ego that can come along with this, as well, a certain amount of indignation about people associating you with a family along those lines. How far has the apple fallen from the tree, this kind of thing. So what we could see then at the start is his base position, obviously being sworn in, and then not coming back to that. Okay, so this is comfort level setting in. We know from the environmental surroundings that the chair is cushioned, which, based on the style, will mean that it goes underneath him as well. It would be nice to know at this stage if the chair's on wheels, because that can add a certain amount of freedom to the movement to allow all of the necessary blood to flow to our muscles when they start to fatigue, when we've been sat in one position for too long. We need to shake it up a little bit, let some things move, because we become uncomfortable. That would be an interesting thing to understand at this stage.
Brought against her. And you understand that you're here today to answer questions?
I do.
And you understand that you took an oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, correct?
I do.
Right. And you understand, I assume, that the testimony you give here today has the same force and effect as though you were testifying in front of a judge and a jury?
I do.
All right. A couple of ground rules, Mr. Hobbs, if we could.
They weren't really targeted questions, targeted emotionally. It was just the procedural kinds of things.
To ask questions that hopefully you understand. But if I ask a question,
but you can see already the build-up, the change in breathing happening, change in breathing. When people start to impede growing levels of anxiety, it can change the breathing patterns from being fairly located towards the stomach or fairly invisible to fairly visible in the chest regions. This is when we start to become more engaged throughout our entire body, when these emotions are reaching, kind of a fever pitch of anticipation, right? The anticipatory factors could be because of the tension of the situation. We're about to go through a deposition and talk about some pretty awful things if you're on the side of truthfulness, or it could be anticipatory over the fact that he knows what he's going to have to be asked about, and therefore it's, can I remember everything? Can I remember everything that I went over with my lawyers? Can I remember the stories that I told? These kinds of things. Which is when most people tend to, if they're looking towards areas to try and exculpate themselves, it would be you see a lot of exclusions and the like in terms of how they talk. A lot of, to the best of my knowledge, these kinds of things.
You don't understand. If you would tell me that you don't understand it, I'll try to rephrase it. Is that fair?
That sounds fair.
And if you tell me that you don't understand it, I'm going to assume that you do understand the question. Is that a fair assumption, sir?
It is.
All right. I will also try to give you the courtesy of letting you finish your answer before I start my next question. If you would allow me the same courtesy of letting me finish my question before you start your answer. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because the court reporter has a
Procedural things. So we'll see no kind of big outward displays at this stage, but this is important to take note of. This is important to take note of in terms of understanding what we're going to see moving forward. Essentially, this would be Hobbs at minute levels of rest with that kind of growing sense of what's impending.
Have a tendency to be soft-spoken at times. So even though we're on videotape, if you would try to answer out loud as forcefully as you can, I think that'll help both the
Interesting.
photographer,
I like that.
Mr. Wellenberger, who's on the phone, it'll help the court reporter. Is that fair?
I've no idea if that's part of the procedural part to encourage volume and gusto. But that's if it's not, then that's definitely smart in my opinion in terms of whoever it is that's interviewing them, because you're encouraging emotions to become louder in a kind of volume sense, turn up their visuals.
Here in Little Rock?
That's at the rally?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other reasons that you sued my client?
I object to the extent that that calls for a legal conclusion because it requires him to apply facts to the law.
I'm just asking you, sir, for the reasons why you filed a lawsuit against my client. You said the letter on the internet and the rally. Anything else?
Continued objection. So you go on and answer.
So what we can learn about as well,
Probably, or not probably,
from a people reading perspective, are where his teams are. And from his right, that's where his counsel is, and from the people cross-examining him, that's over to the left side, so we can start to understand a little bit more about the position of the room, where you would go to try and find that safe haven if you ever grow to a degree of anxiety that you're struggling to cope. This is when we retreat into ourselves and start to pacify and look towards people for comforts and confirmation and these kinds of things, so we can map that out, even though we can't see it.
I mean, you've said in press releases and in the newspaper that these are things that had been said time and time again against you for years and years. Isn't that right?
It is.
Matter of fact, you said you've previously testified, you've been quoted in the newspapers as saying that the press was out to get you for years, correct?
Still breathing.
I had to see that quote.
Well, that's something that you've thought, isn't it? That the press has been out to get you for years and years?
I had to, no, I don't think I thought that.
Well, you filed a grievance against Mr. Reardon, didn't you?
I don't think I thought
I did.
that.
And who's Mr. Reardon?
He's the defense attorney for Damian Eccles.
All right. And when did you file that grievance against him?
I'm not sure of the date, but probably 07, 08.
All right. And the reason for that is because you think he's out to get you.
No, I think their actions were out to get me.
Well, you say...
Did you see that? So that was a very clearly rehearsed moment, a very clearly rehearsed part, right? We can see from the action of the chair that it must have arms on the chair. So it's not like one of these chairs that I'm sat on that it's got nothing on to rest your arms on. There's this kind of I'll have to hold it higher so you can see, but there's this kind of a position on the chair as well, so we can know a little bit more about what the structure of his body is doing at this stage, so we can better understand signs of tension, so we can better understand signs of change and discomfort would be the better sense of the word. But the preparation that he went through with his lawyer, that was almost the approval mark. You know, their actions were out to get me. Did I say that right? Did I say that right? Right. So this is how we can start to understand where he goes in terms of his comfort in the room when things get too technical. Right. When it's not as emotively charged, it's more technically charged. He will go towards his. I'm saying he will go like it's declarative. If we're basing, you know, the single serving elements at this stage. On this one example, then that's where he will keep going.
Isn't it true, Mr. Hobbs, that from basically the time of the murder and the conviction, the murders and the trial, and the conviction
Oh, gulp.
and all the appeals that have gone
Please swallow
forward since
behavior.
then.
Big sign of growing anxiety there, which again could be that double-sided element. Talking about horrible stuff, you could be uncomfortable as a person talking about that kind of thing, or it could be because you were involved.
You've been at this. You've at least been at the center of this controversy about who killed the boys and were the boys wrongfully convicted.
Objection
No.
calls for a legal
Nope.
conclusion.
No, you haven't.
So there we go. That would be giving credence to the fact that his breathing is increasing, therefore his pulse is increasing faster. The pre-swallow we saw is connected to that because his throat's drying out, therefore he has to rehydrate. So we would know at this stage, as close as we can do, with any degree of certainty, that this is how Hobbs displays anxiety, which doesn't stipulate fear or deception at this stage, just a growing sense of anxiety about the topics that are going to be spoken about. So from a non-verbal communication aspect, what we would look to understand here is where the emotions shift. So we would start to tackle the topics accordingly with further elements that we want to understand. So can we talk about the topics that are directly associated with the foul nature, and then talk about something else that's not connected to the foul nature of the act, but connected to his character and the like? Does he change his discomfort to be more comfortable because it's away from the topic, so therefore making us think, all right, that anxiety is more likely to be around the topics that were being discussed? Or does that anxiety train keep going because now his character is under review? That's just hypothetical. Because this is first-time viewing kind of things. But these are the ways that you can start to process that, to separate which side of that fence the anxiety is coming down on.
That hadn't been a controversy?
No.
Why do you say that?
Indignation.
Why do you say that?
Question reversal.
Sir.
Because
So-
it's not a true.
Classic. So most people would ascribe the question reversal to liars, buying themselves more time. We've all heard this kind of fallacy that goes along with that. There are additional elements that come along with this, and that is the presentation of ego. How dare you ask me that kind of question? Why are you asking me that kind of question? It's a loftier purpose, which meets with the angle that his neck went to during that indignation remark that aligns with that. So we start to understand more about the fact that, I'm saying fact again, it's not a legitimate fact, but it's something that's presenting itself to be more truer as we go, in that there is a presentation of ego.
Hasn't there been a controversy since the conviction as to whether or not the West Memphis Three were wrongfully convicted?
In some people's mind.
Okay. And, well, there's been national press on the subject, hasn't there?
There has.
And there have been several books written on the subject, hasn't there?
A few.
There's been shows-
Indirectly, because the guy himself is just over slightly to his left. He's still not looking at him.
There have been shows on America's Most Wanted about
Back
it.
to
There has.
In fact, you've been in all those shows, haven't you?
the council. This will be part of their training that Hobbs and his council have gone through in preparation, because they'll know the kind of things that will be asked. They'll know not directly, like they'll hand them a set of questions, but the kind of topics that would need to be discussed, right? So they prepare accordingly. That was the confirmation glance number 2, because there's going to be this further discussion, presumably then, about shows that he's been in, or how he's capitalised on what's happened, and this kind of character. It might turn into a character assassination. Who knows? But this kind of character review that's going on at this particular stage. But the whole time, the cross-examiner, whatever they're called, is asking his questions. He will not look at him. He will not look at him. Which again could be one of two things: either ego, well, one of three things really, either ego, fear, or both.
That's a yes, correct?
It is a yes.
And that's been since the time of the convictions going forward to today, right? That controversy.
Objection to the extent that it calls for a legal conclusion.
You get to still answer. He has to just make objections to preserve them. But
Will you
unless he
repeat
tells
the
you not,
question?
Could you read the question back, ma'am? No. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, technical proceedings then.
The time of the conviction, convictions going forward to today. And then it's
Oh, that must be where the stenographer is then.
Right?
Far right.
I didn't understand that question.
Well, the controversy of whether or not the West Memphis Three actually killed the 3 little boys and whether or not they were wrongfully convicted. That's been a controversy from shortly after the verdict was returned until we sit here today, right?
Correct.
Continuing
It is.
suggestion that it calls for a legal conclusion, Mr. Hobbs is not required to define what a public controversy is or what a controversy is.
Ted, we're going to take the deposition by the rules, which means you get to say objection for, period. And then if I think that I need any education about what the objection is, then I'll ask you. But we're not going to sit here for the rest of the day and have you coach the witness. So I'd ask that you follow the rules and basically say objection for or instruct the witness not to answer, which is all the rules allow you
I'm
to do.
permitted to state the basis for the objection. And what I don't want you to do is come in and ask 50 questions, and because I object to 49 of them and not 50, and try to say that I waive the objection with respect to the 50th question.
You can object as to
So it
form
could
as
be
to all 50
And
questions.
continuing, well then it's going to be like that. So
Look
continuing
at this.
objection,
He's just sat there
objection,
watching a battle ensue in front of him.
define what is or isn't a public controversy, because that's
But
what
you can see where the focus goes. He will look at his counsel. That's where his comfort lies. Take that.
Isn't it true, Mr.
Far
Hoffman?
left.
You wrote a journal.
Starts
Did you
talking
keep it
again.
short from May the 5th, 1993 forward?
I have done a lot.
Back off to the
You
well,
produced
kind
a
of middle.
volume journal to us, correct?
Correct.
And in that journal, don't you state that the press is out to get you?
No.
You don't say that?
Nope.
Do you think folks are out to get you?
No.
I'm thinking that he does.
Mr. Hobbs, how would you describe yourself to the jury as we sit here today?
Has been a pretty good man.
Well, tell me about your
First time he's directly looked.
I'm
First time he's directly looked when the purity of his character has been called up into directness as part of the question. This is the bit that they need to hammer home, right? That they need to curry favour with. I'm a good man.
divorced from a marriage that has been interrupted by the death of our child.
And that's from Pam Hobbs.
Correct.
Okay. What do you think, as you sit here
2004,
today,
I
what do you
think.
think your reputation in the community is?
The people that know me like me.
Does anyone really know you?
But generally, what if you had to describe your reputation to folks other than just a good man, what else would it be?
A hard-working man, good dad, good husband in the past, pretty good man.
You an honest fellow?
I try my best.
Law-abiding man?
I do pretty good at it.
Now, there's parts of that where you could argue that there's question dodging. It's not a direct answer. You an honest man? Yes. You a law-abiding man? Yes. Right. Those are technically the answers to the questions, right? But when you look at the colloquialism of the neighbourhood of Little Rock, this is by and large how smaller neighbourhoods will talk. They have their own little colloquialisms. I know where I'm from. The smallest village where I grew up, it was Milton. We had our own particular kind of cadence in terms of how we would answer direct questions, where technically speaking the answer was yes. There would be additional indirect dialogue after.
Friends, people don't even know me. I don't even know them.
You were asked that question on
Here we
CNN.
go.
Sure.
Bigger emotional engagement.
Roughly so 07, 08.
Okay, that was before. Was that before or after the DNA results? Before-
After.
Was it after?
I'm guessing after.
I don't want you to guess. I mean, that's one of the things that I
I
know
don't
Ted.
keep
and
up with the dates.
I know Ted doesn't want you to guess.
I'm not keeping up with the dates.
So the first time you were ever asked if you had killed the 3 boys, it's your testimony was after the DNA results?
Probably.
When were you on Geraldo?
'94, I think.
Were you on Cooper? So you
Oh.
don't remember.
Oh,
Other
there
than
we
you
go.
remember you talked
That
about
must be one of the
in
cuts.
'93, but you don't remember what you talked about. Is that right?
Correct.
And it was about.
Don't remember what we talked about. This is where the exclusions are starting to come in then.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Voice timbre starting to go. So this might be. I should have marked the passage of time. Let's have a look then. Let's go back. So we're 9:25. Okay, so it jumps about 10 minutes. Timbre starting to go again. So that's why the replenishments happen there.
Idea what papers you read?
Yeah, some statements
What statements?
from Sharon Nelson.
What statements from Sharon Nelson?
Bunch of garbage.
Well, what did Miss Nelson say in those statements that you think's a bunch of garbage?
How that she believes that I told her I found the boy's body before the police.
Right, back to
When
the
did-
confirmation. Okay, so this is interesting then. This is interesting. So we're starting to see these particular parts of where this ego, this indignation is starting to rear its ugly head in that he will directly look towards the person asking the questions, and that's when his voice starts to come higher, highlighting these points that he wants to tackle straight on because it's garbage, right? This is what you would call congruent. You know, the gestural timing is on point with precisely whatever's happening at this stage. Given that he's quite a subdued man, it'd be interesting to see what his hands are doing if he's holding that particular position, but just underneath the table as well, across his lap, maybe over his crotch. That would be interesting to see as well. But it's purely conjecture at this stage because we don't know, we can't see it. It doesn't go further down. There's only so much that the creases of the clothes will be able to tell us. But we understand a little bit more about the genuine moments that do align, and that he's capable of raising his voice, not to shouting kind of territories, but he wants to highlight exactly what he is looking to help them understand as part of his coaching that he's gone through with his counsel on the other side. That's why there's that long lustful gaze over to him afterwards.
Did she make those statements, Mr.?
I don't know who she made them to. It's on
I asked
paper.
when she made those
I
statements.
don't know.
I don't know. Got that same kind of pitch,
Sure don't.
tension, volume.
Do you know when she made those statements?
No, sir.
I'm not looking at you again.
Have you?
No, sir.
Okay. Why not?
Objection to the extent that it calls for a legal conclusion.
I'm not asking for a legal conclusion. I'm asking you why you haven't
You're
sued.
asking for legal strategy. You're asking for why he did stuff. You're asking for the manner in which he chose to exercise his rights under the law, and that relates to legal strategy.
You can answer the question, Mr. Hobbs.
And the question was?
Why hadn't you sued her? She said you found the bodies for the police. That'd be a pretty damning thing.
Breathing back
There
signature
are a
as
lot of
well.
people say garbage like that.
Running the tongue
I
around
hope
her,
I
a lot
get
of
to
chewing.
address them all.
Well, this is your chance. Why hadn't you sued her?
Well, maybe she's on the list.
You got a list of folks you're going to sue?
Couldn't tell you.
Could
That's
tell
in
you.
my mind.
Okay. Well, if you were going to sue folks, who would you sue?
So what I'd like to know at this stage, to have a further understanding of where this kind of non-verbal communication goes, is how many teeth he's got, right? How many teeth he's got in there, because one of the after effects of losing your teeth, you see this in a lot of old people that go through dentures and replacements and the like, and that is the consistent movement in this area, which, if he has teeth, is going to be to reapply moisture through growing levels of heightened breathing and therefore dryness, which is affecting the timbre and the volume, and then all of these kinds of things. So I would like to understand at this stage how many he has, so I could understand from an observational standpoint if the movement of his jaw has a relation to outward signs of anxiety. But this is something that I don't know. I mentioned purely as something else that we could look at if it is that anybody knows.
Everyone
Object
that,
to the extent that it calls for a legal conclusion.
everyone that brought my name up,
Everybody.
I think
Oh, there we go.
deserves something.
Everyone that brought my name up.
I'm a victim of this.
That's not my question. You want to humiliate everyone who's brought your name up. Isn't that right?
I like to see the courts address every one of them.
Well, you said you want to humiliate the Dixie Chicks. Do you want to humiliate everyone who brought your name up in
That
connection
sounds
with it?
fine to me.
Sounds fine to you.
Oh, check back to the council to see if I've gone a bit too far, to see if you've been reeled into where you stand emotionally, right? Because, you know, the kind of difference between technically, that, you know, that lawyers will tend to pull apart that kind of act of retribution is whether it comes from a purely egocentric standpoint or whether it comes from a sense of just being angry, right? Which, you know, there has a certain amount of grey area to their psychological legitimacy, but this is where it looks like the questionings start to be pulled apart in that area. There's been a couple of times that the fingers have come up like this as well, so it's starting to look like that the hands are over the crotch, elbows resting on the arms of the chair. Which we could align to certain fig leafing and crotch protecting behaviour, which, if we look from an evolutionary perspective in terms of the protection of valuables, I'm sure most zoological practitioners will be able to confirm or deny from an animal kingdom perspective. But there is a preservation of things that we clutch in fear, or things that we protect in fear and anxiety, the crotch for the men being one of them. There's obviously the ventral front. If you look into any of Joe Navarro's work, he goes into that at length in terms of those details in that area. The protections of the wrist and the neck is also another related one, but just particular to Hobbs here, we know that there is coverage. So there is nerves, and it's growing sense of nerves from the beginning. It's like the proverbial putting a toad into a boiling frying pan, and the toad will jump straight out. But if you put it into cold and then slowly heat it up, it will sit there and die. That's what it looks like as an outside observer here that the cross-examiner is trying to do. He's trying to direct the question slowly but steadily to see where this man's emotional control lies. Because if you look at the brutality of the crimes, that has a definitive relation.
All right. What other papers did you look at in preparation for the deposition?
Some other pile of garbage.
Well,
That's what I think of them.
I appreciate that, but I need to know what pile of garbage you looked at, Mr. Hobbs.
I don't know.
Can't remember a single other piece of paper.
Don't feed him
I
that.
don't know what it's called, just a pile of papers.
Well,
There we
explain
go.
to me how tall
So
was
we got the first blocking in.
pile of papers did you look at? Use your hand from the table,
A half inch
half inch, okay,
or less.
or less, okay. And do you recall how many different documents were in that half inch of paper?
No. After I started reading them, oh yeah, I'm sorry. The police interview,
Of you in 07?
roughly, if that's when it happened.
All right. Well, and that was before, that police interview, that was before.
There's a lot of ambiguous specificity to his details, and I'm not really sure if, from an English perspective, those two words should go together. But what I mean is, there's a lot of times where he's saying, yes, it happened on these dates, and there's a lot of times when he's going, 04, 05, 07, I don't know. And then there's a lot of times where he's saying exclusionary in terms of the details. So the reason I bring that up is because the timelines of those levels of information don't match in terms of like a linear angle. It is often thought that you can remember more recent events going back further, and the further you go back, the less objectivity you have in recall. You're not as sure, basically, in what's happening. But at this stage, these are stories that I would presume, 2009, and the crimes starting in like 93, 94. They've told the stories many times at this stage, so it should be details that were right there. And if they are details that are coming to light, then the dates don't necessarily have a chronological reference which is why it's interesting that he can remember some things from 07, 08. He can remember some things from 94, 95, but he can't remember some things from 04 and 05. And these things align with the moments where he looks back to his own counsel for that brief respite, for that brief "did I do okay? Is this going okay?" moment. Purely from an observational standpoint, we can understand where Hobbs goes to in times of stress, how he moves in times of stress. Right. So when we're looking to speak about particular topics and we see these kinds of behaviors occur, we get to understand, okay, exhibition of stress. If this is stress on a topic that I need further information about, then I know exactly how I'm going to question him further from there.
November of 07 when Ms. Maines posted her letter and appeared at the rally that you're suing on, right?
Sounds good.
Well, that's when it, I mean, not
Very
sounds good, that's when it
non-committal.
was, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't keep up with the dates.
You don't keep up with the dates. Well, if I told you that you were interviewed, that your police interview was several months prior to Ms. Maines posting her letter or appearing at the Little Rock rally, would that sound about right to you?
Objection calls for speculation. He said he didn't know.
Not
I
asking
still
exactly.
don't know.
Still don't know? You know that your interview is available on the internet, isn't it?
It is.
In fact, the video is available on the internet. You can get on YouTube and look at it, can't you?
You sure can.
And how long's that been available on the internet?
Couldn't tell you.
Why'd the police want to talk to you?
Ask the police.
Okay.
What? That doesn't make sense.
Other than looking at this half-inch paper that you can't recall, what else did you do to prepare for your deposition, Mr. Hobbs?
Tried to sleep on it.
Try to get a good night's sleep?
I tried.
Okay.
Didn't happen.
Appreciate
So
it.
here we go.
What
We've
else?
got the kind of spectrum now in how he's moving based on comfort, based on confidence, based on engagement, directly focusing on the guy that's providing the cross-examination, the questions, when there are things that he's looking to hammer home. You know, behaviorally, this was resting on my mind. I didn't get a lot of sleep that night. Oh, you poor thing. Right? So that's been posed directly to him in the moments where it's, oh, you couldn't remember this, or I couldn't tell you. We'll humiliate the people that I'm trying to sue. Talking about the death of the boys, all of these kinds of details. It's this blurry grey area. Goes back to his particular counsel for comfort, to replenish, to recuperate. Right? His port in a storm. So we've got these tells now from a reliable standpoint in terms of where he turns based on the kind of emotive state and therefore the thoughts and motivations that he's having in accordance with that.
Did you do?
Prayed about it.
Prayed about it. Anything else?
No,
Okay. You met with
No.
our lawyers?
I did.
When did you meet with them?
Last night.
And who was present?
Mr. Ted and Mr. Cody.
Anyone else present?
Seven.
Okay.
I'm thinking. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, when
Is
in
the natural
07 did you
position?
first contact Mr. Sampson about being your media spokesman?
I'm not sure.
Well, was it spring, winter, fall, summer?
Fall, probably.
Fall.
I'm just guessing fall.
Objection calls for speculation.
I want you to guess. I just want you to give me the best answer that you
I
can.
just did.
Straight back at him. I just did.
Was it before or after? Did you retain Mr. Sampson to be your media spokesman before
So
or
this
after?
is why we know about his pacifying now. Pacifying is done mostly with his thumbs. Tension,
Probably
squeezing.
before, if I remember right.
Okay.
Guessing again, because I don't remember.
How much did you have a written
And
agreement?
that's the difference. Everyone will have their own idiosyncratic way of pacifying. For some, I mean, if you do it with the fingers, it might be rubbing, it might be flicking, it might be clicking. Some crack their knuckles. For Mr. Hobbs, it's the squeeze. It's the squeeze between the hands that happens that brings him that brief flush of comforting chemicals that we get from pacifying.
The specifics of what? Well, let me back up. Was he acting as your lawyer then, or just a media spokesperson?
A spokesman.
Not a lawyer.
Correct.
He wasn't giving you any legal. Did you keep any documents or records of
Nope.
folks that you sent The
Give 'em a
journals
long
too,
time.
the publishers.
Thumbs are still going.
Not that I can recall.
Not that I can recall with the stutter and the dry throat. This is when the exclusions are presenting themselves again.
You
Oh,
lied.
no. I don't think I said I had a book deal. No.
Okay. You never told anybody you had a book deal?
Maybe not like you're trying to say. I might have told them I was working on one, would like to get one.
Okay. But you never told anybody you had a book deal?
I'm not sure.
Well, if you did, that'd be a lie, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure.
Well, have you ever had a book deal?
No.
Okay, so if you told somebody you had a book deal, that'd be a lie.
I might have told somebody I was working on one at the time.
Consider yourself an honest man, Mr. Hobbs.
Oh, good
I tried.
question. I try in the middle, the grey area. Back for comfort. I hope he's left that pause tactically. I hope he's left it tactically. Because if he hasn't, it's a smart thing to do. Chris Voss, tactical
Who
pause in
else
this
have
kind
you
of thing.
sold your life story to other than Dimension Films?
Nobody that I can recall.
So if someone else, so you've never testified to that, or not testified, you've never said that you sold your life story, had a deal to sell your life story to somebody else.
See, that's where exclusions become much more significant. Have you ever sold your life story to anybody other than Dimension Films? Not that I can recall. Well, when it's your life story, this is a significant event. You would, and I'm saying you would, like it's assured, right? I'm approaching this from an objective standpoint, right? But if someone were to talk to me about my life story and I've sold it to one company, if somebody else approached it and I would have to talk to a whole other group of people about my life story and this kind of thing, I would know. I would know who I spoke to. I might not know their companies, but I would know it wasn't just Dimension. This is when the exclusions become needless and the use of them too rapid and too often that they start to roll off the tongue. Giving us further understanding that the exclusions is part of his dialect, that's a comfort thing that he uses in times of distress as well.
I don't recall saying something like that.
And do you recall any other efforts or discussions with folks to sell your story, life story, to other entities? For book deals or movie deals or anything like that?
Well, we've always talked about books, but I don't know of anyone else that I've talked to buy it.
Okay.
Not right off.
What about movies or films?
What the HBO made a couple documentaries.
Right.
Paradise Lost.
That's Paradise Lost, Paradise Lost 2.
It is.
Any other films?
Squeezing.
Compensated with regard
That's
to
been
the
talked about.
films about the murders?
No.
He's talked to people about that.
So that you could appear in those, right?
I don't remember.
Okay. You were okay with being in those?
Well, we all talked about it.
Who's we?
Every family involved.
Yeah.
What'd you?
The-
Of the three little boys.
Correct.
Right. And what do you recall discussing with the family of the three little boys?
Looking
about
into
the
it.
films?
Oh, God. Very tense situation whenever they actually discussed.
Some of them wanted to do it.
How'd you come out on that?
How'd I come out? I don't recall. They were going to do it anyway.
Needless exclusion again.
If you watched the video, the documentaries,
Well,
Yes. Yeah.
what'd you think of them?
totally wrong.
Yeah.
In what respects?
Didn't like how it
Portrayal.
painted me.
Portrayal of who? You?
No,
Of who?
the convicted.
Oh, because he portrayed him as innocent.
Totally wrong.
They kind of portrayed them as being innocent.
Okay. How else were the documentaries totally wrong?
Couldn't tell you.
And that's the end of that one. Well, very cagey indeed, right? There's the presentation of ego. There's the presentation of a high degree of inhibition, a high degree of inhibiting natural speech to control, to provide specifically chosen storylines and elements. We know how he displays stress. We know how he displays fears. We know the signs that he goes to when his character's being challenged, so he can push that ego back forward. We know the signs that his voice will do in times of stress versus in times of engagement. We've got the spectrum behavior. We know where he'll go to try and make himself feel better. We know what he does in terms of pacifying, that it's statistically more likely to present as a squeeze rather than a rub or a pinch or a pull or any of these kinds of things. So this is all reliable information that we can use to watch more interviews, to talk to him about more things, to better understand his character on whole. Right, I'm going to go back and watch that interview in full. Yeah, I'm kind of glad that whoever it was cut this down now, because this has gone on for quite some time. But yes, final thoughts. Very, very cagey, ego-driven. Very much enjoyed how much he was able to get out of the scenario. I would imagine that the money and the status that he got for himself from his self-perception made him feel more in line with his family, like he was worth something. In terms of his place in the case, whatever you'd call it. I mean, obviously, there's no way to call it from this particular video, and there's no way to call it directly if it were the full video anyway, because well, there might be actually, because they might have spoken about those topics, but at least from this video, there wasn't as much detail spoken about from the case itself, but the moments where it did arise, he was presenting with those same degrees of control, those same degrees of anxiety and fear, but it was the indignation towards the accusations against himself, which, right, it's arguable at this stage, because, you know, if he were directly involved, you know, there'd have been evidence, he'd have been put away, you know, there'd have been something that turned up if they're still investigating it all of these years later. So this is why there could be arguments to and fro in terms of where this indignation comes from, where the motivation for that comes from. Whether it is, you know, that kind of righteous, I didn't do it, how dare you, it's ruined my life, it's taken my marriage, this kind of thing, or whether it is from the, you know, the more Machiavellian side, which would definitely be an influence given the rich family that he came from and the crime background that he went into as well. So yeah, very cagey. I mean, very cagey, and needlessly so. Needlessly so. There's plenty more things he could have done to endear himself to the viewers that he was so desperate to try and do with those moments where he'd focus in on his character. I didn't get any sleep. It was horrible to be this. I'm a victim here. These kinds of things. So yeah, guys, I hope this was worth the wait for you that requested that. I'm very interested to know what your thoughts are on the matter, since I did the first one a while back now. I don't know how long ago it was, but it was a while ago. I've watched the documentaries and I've read a little bit more as per the usual. So if anything, I felt a bit more prepared about the details of the case here. You know, from pen to paper kind of standpoint, but I'm very much interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this, what you think of Hobbs and his placement in the whole debacle, and where they're going to go forward from here, if they go anywhere, right? If they go anywhere at all. But yeah, more importantly, if you did get anything out of this from at least an educational standpoint, then please do click on the like button, the subscription button, all that usual 21st century stuff. And if you didn't, then don't. It's a free country. It's entirely up to you at the end of the day. But right, with that in mind, I wish you well, and I'll talk to you all soon.